Right. So they once came to the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism. His name was Rabbi Yisrael. And they complained to him that many of his followers or his disciples, when they pray, they get excited, they shake back and forth, they scream, they pray out loud. And they said, this is, it's not the way to act. You should pray calmly, silently, smoothly, not scream, not shake. And, it looks funny. So he responded to them that when you ever saw someone drown, God forbid, terrible thing. So the person that's drowning is shouting, is splashing with his hands and feet, right? He wants people to save him. And obviously, no one laughs in such a situation. So too, over here, that my disciples that are praying, the reason why they shout and they shake back and forth is because they are, so to speak, asking to be saved. And like we soon see the depth of this response and the back and forth. This week's Torah portion really is the second half of the story of the tabernacle, of Hashem's commandments and how to make the tabernacle. Last week's Torah portion discussed mainly the building, the dimensions, what fabrics it was made out of, how it should look, how it should be. How it's split into. There was a courtyard, the main sanctuary, and then the Holy of Holies. And also the main instruments or vessels that were there, the altar, the washing, the menorah, the lamp, the lantern, and the table where their bread was kept. So mainly the structure of the house. This week's Torah portion discusses more what's going to happen in the house, which is that the priest and the high priest were going to work in the house, in the tabernacle. So it discusses more the uniform of the priest and the high priest, the clothing that they wore. That's a very big discussion in this week's Torah portion, the Torah portion of Tetzave, which means command. And which each one of them really, the regular priest had 4 garments. The high priest had 8 garments. There was only one high priest. In the time of the Jews in the desert, there was Aaron, Moses' brother. And between the high priest, the high priest's garments, he always, whenever he served in the temple, he had to wear all his 8 garments. There's one exception. On Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, then when he would go into the Holy and Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so then he would only wear 4 garments, the plain white garments, not any of the extra garments that the high priest wears, but usually he would wear all the garments. Today we're going to focus on seemingly a small detail in one of the garments. The garment which is called the me'il, which is like a robe that's made of blue. And on the bottom of it, there were like bells. I'm actually going to share the screen and show a picture, so to make sure we all are on the same page. Let's see. Find it. No, it's not the right picture. Here's a picture that I want to show. So this would be a picture of his robe. And on the bottom, as you can see, there were bells, right? So there's bells and like a pomegranate or some sort of decoration between the bells. So that was on the bottom of his robe. So we're really going to focus today on this part of the robe, on the bottom of the robe, the bells and the pomegranates. So that's the robe, the overview of it, and the bottom there were these bells. Okay, so we'll start with reading the verse that speaks about it, source 1 on the sheet. And so when the Torah describes in great detail the different details of the garment of the high priest. So this robe, which was a blue robe, on the bottom and on its bottom hem, you shall make pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet wool. Yeah, the pomegranates were made of wool, I guess, sewed very tight together to somewhat of that shape. On its bottom hem, all around, and golden bells in their midst all around. So this verse, this in their midst, is really not so clear. Who's between what, who's in what? It could be understood in one or two ways. Either it could be understood that the bells and the pomegranates were one next to each other, similar to what we saw in the picture, right? There was a pomegranate and a bell, pomegranate and a bell. Or in their midst could be understood that the pomegranate was in the bell. So like every bell has something inside that shakes. So that was a pomegranate shape, pomegranate shaped instrument that was in the bell that made the noise. And really these two ways of understanding in the myths we find two interpreters of the Chumash that explain it two different ways, Rashi and the Ramban, Nachmanides. So let's see number 2. In their midst all around, i.e. between them all around, meaning between two pomegranates, one bell was attached and suspended on the bottom hem of the robe. So Rashi explains, similar to the picture we saw, that in the midst means there were two pomegranates and a bell in between. So again, so you had this long robe. On the bottom of the robe, the Kohen had, it's decorated with a pomegranate shape, and then next to it a bell, pomegranate bell. That's Rashi's opinion. Nachmanides, number 3, takes issue with Rashi. It says like this: nor do I know either why the rabbi, Rashi, made the bells independent objects, stating that there was one bell between every two pomegranates. For if so, the pomegranates serve no purpose. The bells made noise, but the pomegranates is just decoration. Okay, so what's wrong with that? Let the pomegranate be decoration. So here there's a strange comment that Nachmanides, that Ramban says, and if they were made just for beauty, which seemingly that's what they are there for, decoration, why were they made like hollow pomegranates? Let him rather make them like golden apples. Okay, so that's his challenge against Rashi's opinion that there was pomegranate is, if that's the case, they serve no purpose. And if they're there for beauty, they should be, why are they hollow pomegranates? Let them rather be golden apples. So we'll get right back to this question. I just want to first read what Nachmanides says himself, how he interprets the verse. Instead, we must say that the bells were inside the pomegranates themselves. For the pomegranates were hollow and made in the shape of small pomegranates that have not yet burst open, and the bells were hidden inside, but visible through them. So he says the bells were inside the pomegranates. So the pomegranates were like covering over the bells, right? So the bell was like in a cloth cover, which were in the shape of pomegranates. All right. So that's it. So his opinion is that in them means literally that the bells were in the pomegranate. So we have two interpretations to the in their midst all around. According to Rashi, it means that they were between, that the bells and the pomegranates were between one another. There was one. According to Nachmanides, it means that the golden bells were covered by pomegranate-shaped coverings, but you're able to see it through the pomegranate. Okay, but what is Nachmanides' issue with Rashi? That's really what is a kind of strange. That's what we're going to focus on now. And if they were made just for beauty, why were they made like hollow pomegranates? Let him rather make them like golden apples. What's troubling about this challenge? Well, if they're apples, you're going to say, why not pomegranates? Why not pears? Why not any other fruit? So what type of argument is it? If they're there just for beauty, why don't you make them pomegranate? Why don't you make them apples? Apples? Why apples? Maybe a pear. Something is somewhat wrong with this challenge. So later commentaries want to explain, oh, you know what he means? He means to say that why were they hollow? They should be full. But again, so he doesn't just say, why are they hollow? He says, why are they hollow of pomegranate? They should be pears. So it seems like what he's saying is that if it's there for beauty, they should be apples, apple shape. Why? So refine the apple shape in a different one of the vessels of the tabernacle, the menorah. So just that we should all be on the same page, I'm going to share a picture of the menorah. So there you have it. The menorah was the candelabrum. It was a tall candelabra that had 7 branches, and these like buttons or balls that you see decorations were apple shaped, right? They're described as an apple shaped ball or decoration. So there's 3 decorations actually. There's a flower you see on the top, and next to that there's like an apple shape, and then somewhat of an upside down cup, or like a V somewhat. So there we find an apple shape as a decoration. So what Nachmanides is saying, you want to make decorations, if it's there for a purpose, okay, then I have no questions. Then you can always ask maybe something else. So if it's there to be part of the bells, okay, so then I understand why it's a pomegranate. But if it's there for beauty, if it's there to adorn and to show and to make the garment beautiful, it should be an apple, just like we find by the menorah that was there for beauty, that it should be an apple. That's what it seems like his argument is. If that's the case, so after all the dust settles, what we have here is a debate whether the pomegranates were part of the bells or not. According to Nachmanides, the pomegranates were part of the bells. According to Rashi, they were independent from the bells. So it was really just for decoration. Nachmanides says, if it was there just for decoration, it wasn't part of the bells, it should be an apple. Apples, pomegranates, what's the big deal? What's the difference? One, the other. What's the deeper meaning in this argument? Right? So that's one topic, one idea that we want to understand today. That if it's there for beauty, if it's there to adorn the garment, the robe, then it should be According to Rashi, it's pomegranates. According to Nachmanides, it should be apples. What's the significance of apples or pomegranates? And why is it such a topic? Yeah.
I have a question on the Rashi.
Sure.
If the bells and pomegranates are alternating, why doesn't he say that? Why does he say 2 pomegranates and between every 2 pomegranates is a bell? Well, if that's the case, between every 2 bells, there's a pomegranate. Why does he describe it like he describes it instead of just saying they're alternating?
Right. So it could be the reason is because he wants to explain the term that's used in the verse besocham, in their midst. So he wants to explain that there's one between every 2. So that would explain why it's referred to as besocham, in their midst. That's probably why he's using. But you're right. He could have said one or the other. Yeah. You're muted, so I can't hear.
I believe that it's pomegranate instead of any other fruits, especially apples, because it's symbolic Jewish fruits that actually represent the spread of Judaism as often as it seeds inside of pomegranates. That's why it's
right. So we're going to go in that direction.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
thank you very much. That's the direction it's going.
Okay,
And,
sorry.
but we're going to explain what really is the symbolic. He says it's symbolic for Jews, but what's the symbol?
Yeah, because there's so many seeds that it's very fruitful. It's very, right. I don't know, it can spread really quickly. That's the idea, that it will have to be a fruit that represents that Judaism or ideas of Torah will spread as quickly. That's
right. Thank you for that input. That's definitely the direction we're going. But just to make things a little confusing, Jews are also compared to apples in some of the verses. So we would have to explain how both work. All right. So that's the first idea we want to understand. What's the significance of apples and pomegranates, and why are they arguing over it? Another I think we have another topic. Why do you need bells altogether? What are the bells there for? Okay, so we don't have to search far. 2 verses later, tell us the reason why the bells are there. Number 4, it should be on Aaron when he performs the service, and its sound should be heard when he enters the holy before the Lord and when he leaves, so that he will not die. Not by physical punishment, spiritual punishment. But so the sound is very important. That when he comes in and when he leaves, it should be heard. Why is it so important for the sound to be heard? So we turn to Nachmanides on that verse, and he tells us the following. In my opinion, an explanation for the commandment of the bells upon the robe, since seemingly there was no need to wear them, nor are they customary among dignitaries. Yeah, dignitaries don't usually wear bells on the bottom of their robes. Therefore, he explicitly said that he commanded that they be made in order that the sound thereof be heard in the sanctuary. So that's why the Torah tells us clearly what's the reason of the commandment. Because really, if the Torah won't tell us the reason, it would be very weird for us. We won't understand why wear the bells. Seemingly, the bells are totally, there's no need, and it's not customary among dignitaries. So therefore, the Torah clearly tells us the reason. That the reason is that the priest enter before his master as if with permission. For he who comes into the king's palace suddenly incurs the penalty of death, according to the court ceremonial. just as we find it in the case of Achashverosh. So you don't walk in to a king's palace without permission, right? You don't just show up at the White House and start knocking on the door, or not even knock and just walk in. You get permission, you make a meeting, you call before, you come in the right time. So too the Kohen, the high priest, the bells were to indicate and to show that he is coming, and that is an expression of receiving permission to enter, as if he's knocking on the door before he enters. So that's Nachmanides' explanation why the bells are so important. However, this explanation falls short, because if that's the case, he should only need the bells when he enters and exits or enters. But the bells were on him during the whole time of service. So they're really there jingling, making some noise the whole time, not just when he enters and exits. So if it's just knocking on the door to get permission to come, so to speak, so then he shouldn't need to wear it the whole time. From the fact that he's wearing it the whole time, it seems that it's very vital for his whole service, not just for the beginning and the end of getting permission to enter and exit. All right, so far we brought up 2 points about one of the garments. This week's Torah portion discusses the garments that the high priest wore, and we're really discussing a very seemingly minute detail in the garment, the robe, a big blue robe that he wore. On the bottom, the hem of the robe, there were bells and pomegranates. And we explained that the pomegranates were, according to Rashi, the pomegranates were next to the bells, and according to Nachmanides, the bells were inside the pomegranates. They were one unit. And Nachmanides argued that if the pomegranates were between the bells, that means that they're just for beauty. So then seemingly they should be apples, not pomegranates. If they're there for a function, so then I have no problem. That's what Nachmanides says. If they're there for beauty, they should be apples. So we have to understand why, according to Rashi, even if they're there just for beauty, they don't serve a purpose. They should still be pomegranates. But according to Nachmanides, if they're there just for beauty, they should be apples. What's that argument? Then we brought how the purpose of the bells were that the noise should be made. He should be heard. Now, what's the reason for the noise? So Nachmanides says the reason for the noise is because it's like getting permission. So he said, even though that's definitely an explanation, but it still falls short from completely explaining what we need, because he was wearing it the whole time of service, not just when he entered and exited. So there has to be a deeper explanation for this phenomenon, why he needed the bells. Right, just have to plug in my computer. All right, is that clear so far? All right, so we'll continue. So the Rebbe gives an explanation for all of this in the Kabbalistical or Hasidic perspective on these issues. And he really explains how there are 2 types of service of Hashem. All right. There are 2 types of Jews, of ways of connecting to Hashem. One way is the way of a righteous person, a tzaddik, someone who's righteous, someone who is close, so to speak, to God. His service is calm, silent, smooth. Then there's everyone else. Regular people that have struggled, people that don't always feel closeness to Hashem. Their prayer is more out loud, excited, sometimes as a result of agitation, something that's bothering them. And therefore, their prayer is symbolized in excitement or noise. To better understand these two categories, these two types of service to Hashem, let's take an example from a fire that is consuming a material. What happens when you want to light a log on fire, a thick log? So what happens is it makes noise, sparks shoot out, it crumbles. There's excitement. You hear almost the fire and the log, so to speak, fighting with each other. It makes noise. There's sparks. Yeah, you have a question?
Are you talking about crackling noises?
Yeah,
crackling
noises. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So there's like crackling noises, and then let's say a straw. You light a straw on fire. So it might not burn totally smooth, but you don't have so much noise and the fire doesn't jump as much, you don't have as much sparks as a log. But then an oil, let's say you light a oil candle or a candle. The candle burns smoothly, quietly. If it's the right fuel, like oil, it won't spark at all. The reason for this difference, or one of the reasons, in Hasidic terms, fire shows on spirituality. A fire is somewhat spiritual. You can't really grasp it. You can't contain it. You can't hold on to it. So the fire is consuming something physical. So the more physical and coarse the object is, the harder it is for the fire to consume it. So a log, which is very, so to speak, physical and coarse, so the fire and the log have it up together. There's a lot of crackling noises, there's sparks, the fire jumps. But take it to the other extreme, the oil, which is pure, which, so to speak, is a fit fuel for the fire burns softly, quietly, smoothly. The idea that we're trying to get out of here, that we're trying to bring from here, is that when something is a fit fuel, then the connection is smooth. When there is a clash, so then there is excitement. Sorry, I just need to.
Right. Hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Another example to illustrate this idea, actually a Hasidic parable that they say, said in different ways, but let's say it in the way we'll say it in this way. Rich person, the rich person in the village many years ago, when there is every village had their rich person, their person that he was he was, so to speak, the person that gave the most charity in the village, one day invites the poorest person, the beggar of the village, to eat out in the restaurant. It's probably the first time the beggar ever was able to experience such a fancy restaurant, such fancy foods. And they both sit down, and the rich person sits calmly in his chair, orders both of them, and the food starts coming. First, the appetizer comes. So the rich person takes a few bites. Poor person grabs it, gets excited, starts making different noises. His fork is banging against the china. Okay. Finally, the next course comes out. The steak comes out, while the rich person, is slicing off a piece. The poor person is stabbing it with the knife and with the fork, and almost having it out with the steak. Right? Between all this commotion, one of the waiters tells the other waiter, "Wow, finally someone who appreciates the food in the restaurant. He's excited. He's jumping over it. He's ready. He's not even using a fork and knife. He's using his hands. He's tearing it apart. Someone's excited about it." So the other waiter turns to him, No, you got it all wrong. The rich person appreciates it. This is his life. This is the way he lives. So therefore, he's eating in a pleasant way. The poor person, he never saw such food in his life. And therefore, there's like this clash in him. And therefore, he's getting excited over it and jumping over it. But it's not him. On the contrary, the rich person, he, so to speak, in a real way, is united or appreciates the food. The reason why the other person is getting all excited about it is he doesn't really appreciate it. It's not really his lifestyle. It's a clash with his lifestyle. So therefore, he doesn't really know how to handle it and how to juggle, so to speak, this clash. So again, it might be a silly example, but the point of this parable is to bring out that when you're united with something, when you're close to something, your relationship with it is calm. When you're not close to something, you get excited about it. For example, you ever tell, let's say, a child, your parent, your father, your mother, such nice people. They helped me, they assisted me, such nice people. And they look at you and, okay, what do you mean? I just told you a compliment about your parent. And you just shake your head. So what's the explanation? The kid is always around his parents. So he appreciates them in a different way. Appreciates them from a close-up relationship. Someone who is not a child, so their appreciation to the person is from a distance. Oh, this person, there's an attribute that I appreciate. There's something that I like about them, but it's a different type of appreciation. It's appreciation from outside, not appreciation from inside. When, even by, let's say, we could take the child-parent relationship. Let's say the child leaves, goes on a vacation, went to summer camp. He left for a month, 2 months, a few weeks. Comes back home, sees his parents, they hug him, they kiss him. They're excited to see him. The next morning, okay, he might get a hug and kiss, but he's not going to get the same that he got after leaving for 3 months. So I understand, yesterday you loved me, today you didn't love me. The answer is obviously not. That there's, when people are distant, then the love comes out in a more exciting way. When they're together, it's a different type of love, of appreciation. So this, if we go back to our initial discussion, what we're trying to explain here is that a righteous person, he is close to Hashem. He's a spiritual person. He doesn't have the animalistic desires that regular people have. He doesn't really desire physical things. He's a totally spiritual being in the sense of what is his desires, what is he occupied with. And therefore his connection to Hashem to God is on a very quiet and calm level. His prayer is silent. Elijah describes the revelation he had, and he said, first I heard a great wind blowing. Then he describes different noisy experiences, but he says in all those, in the wind, in the noise, Hashem, that's not where Hashem was. Where was Hashem? In a silent voice, when everything became silent. He, being a prophet, being a spiritual person, experienced Hashem in a silent way. His prayer was a silent prayer. Regular people, their service to Hashem when they pray, sometimes it could come from, we're agitated with ourselves. We want to leave. We want to change. We make noise. We get excited. We're looking to connect to something which is far from us, something that is very, very different than us. So therefore, like if we go back to the story that we brought from the Baal Shem Tov at the beginning of the class, that they asked him, why do your disciples make noise when they pray? Why do they shake when they pray? So what did he answer? It's like, do you ever see someone drowning? No one laughs at the person drowning that is shouting and shaking his hands and feet and splashing the water to try to save him. So what he is saying is, there are people that are searching for help to connect to something much higher than them, that's removed from them. And therefore, the prayer is in an exciting way, is screaming, is shouting, is shaking back and forth. So if we want to categorize the righteous person and let's say the average person that has regular life struggles, the difference between their services, we could almost categorize that the righteous person's service to Hashem is silent, his prayer is silent, smooth, while the person that has struggles, that is trying to run away from his own animalistic soul, trying to run away, trying to fix it, trying to refine himself. So we could categorize him by noise. He makes noise. The type of noise of trying to overcome his struggle, his animalistic soul. So if we go back to the robe of the high priest, the high priest was a messenger of all the Jewish people. He was their messenger, their representative before Hashem. Who did he represent? Every single last Jew. Everyone. He represented the righteous people, intermediate people, and the wicked people. Every type of Jew he represented. Everyone. And he was their messenger to serve Hashem, to do the service of Hashem in the temple. On the bottom of his robe, on the hem of his robe, which shows almost on the lowest level, what was there? Bells. Bells. To show that on the bottom of the robe, true, the lowest level, but he included the people that their service to Hashem is with noise. He included the people that they are running away from their own animalistic soul, worldly desires, trying to refine themselves, struggling with refining themselves. He included those people. Those people were resembled in the bottom of his robe, in the bells. Without that, his service was incomplete. What did it say? That if he walks into the temple without bells, that's his service is improper, and it says that he should wear the bells, that he shouldn't die, which indicates that it's an intrinsic part of his service to wear the bells, to include everyone. And with excluding those people, his service would not be complete. Yeah, you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to ask you.
We can't hear you.
I wanted to ask you.
We can't hear you. Oh, wait a second. Say again.
I wanted to ask you something. No, never mind. It's
very low.
We can hear.
I'm sorry.
We can hear Rabbi Steinmetz. Might be something wrong with your ears.
Oh, never mind. It's my fault.
Okay, I was going to ask you that the high priest really represents everyone.
Yeah, sorry, that was my fault. My.
Okay.
That's
all right. Now I can't hear you. Something happened to your microphone.
Oh no! Now I hear. Good.
Now, okay. The high priest represents every Jew, whether they're a Zadok or trying to attain to be, or whether they're studying Torah, or whether they're working in the fields. Is that correct?
Correct.
He represents everyone.
Yes.
And maybe that's the reason for the golden bells and the fruit, that it's a representation of every kind of Jew.
How?
The highest to the lowest.
Who's the highest?
Because the golden bell, people who study, because a golden bell to me means
Something special.
a very, extremely special.
So actually,
and
yes, sorry for interrupting. Actually,
no, that's all, please.
Here we're trying to bring out that the noise shows on the lowest level. This is his hem. It's on the bottom of his robe. On the bottom of his robe, he has these bells, which represent almost the lowest, the people that their service is with noise, running away from the own physical, their let's say wrong desires, trying to refine themselves. The ones that are trying to refine themselves. That's what the bells represent. And the pomegranates also represent that. How the pomegranates represent that? So we're going to go back to our source sheet. There's a very interesting passage in the Talmud. And it's about pomegranates. The Jews are compared to pomegranates and apples. And when Jews are compared to a certain fruit, that obviously shows that there's a certain aspect in that fruit that is a common denominator to all Jews. In other words, all Jews share in common something similar to that fruit. So regarding pomegranates, the Talmud says like this. It says in the verse, your temples are like split pomegranates. Okay, it's like a split pomegranate. What is the meaning of the word your temples? In Hebrew, it is rakasech. So the Talmud interprets that to the word rakasech is related to the word rekanim, which means you emptiest. So based on that, the Talmud explains that even the emptiest among you, Israel, are full of mitzvot like a pomegranate. That is the idea that the Talmud explains is represented with a pomegranate. That even people, if we think about a pomegranate for a second, what part of the pomegranate do you eat? The seeds, not the flesh. And also the seeds, some fruit that you eat the seeds, but the seeds are all together. Here, the seeds are between so to speak, walls of flesh, right? Which show that there are many seeds here, but they're all individual, in their own individual compartments, which means that's why they represent people that do mitzvot, even your emptiest. There's a contradiction here. Are they empty or are they full of mitzvot? So what it's saying is people that do mitzvot, but they're like the pomegranate. The mitzvot are not their identity. It's like the seeds of a pomegranate that are each in their own compartment. On the other hand, the apple, we eat, what part of the apple we eat? The flesh of the apple. That represents righteous people. People that their identity is oneness with Hashem. The people that serve Hashem with silence, in a calm way. So to put this in perspective to what we said earlier, the people that serve Hashem in a calm way are compared to apples. The people that serve Hashem in an exciting way, meaning we are distant, the people that are distant from Hashem, and the people that, therefore, they make noise, like someone who's drowning, someone who's searching to be saved, they're compared to the pomegranates. So what's on the bottom of the hem next to the bells, next to the noisemakers? Pomegranates, the same type of people. Now, the Nachmanides argued that if they're there for beauty, bring apples. What he's saying is like this. Both of these fruit bring out a certain positive attribute. However, even though externally there are people that are pomegranates, which means they do mitzvot, but they're not one with the mitzvot that they do. They're not refined to the level that their service to Hashem is silent. They're still on the level of noise. But deep inside those people, everyone is a righteous person. Everyone has a soul that is pure and connected with Hashem in an essential way. So he says, if we want to bring out their beauty, bring it out with apples, because everyone is really an apple. However, Rashi, who's looking in a more simple way, says, true, but externally, these people are still pomegranates. So we're going to bring out their positive, their beauty with being a pomegranate. All right, so that's the explanation the Rebbe gives for that argument. That also explains why when let's say on the Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, the high priest didn't wear not pomegranates, not bells, because then the essential connection of a Jew and Hashem is revealed, and everyone's connection, everyone's, so to speak, apple, everyone's silent connection with Hashem, essential connection with Hashem, the oneness of the Jews with Hashem is revealed. So there's no pomegranates. Then everyone is elevated to the level of a silent and calm connection. Okay. So just to summarize what we spoke about this class, we spoke about the hem of the robe of the high priest, which had pomegranates and bells. And we really focused and explained the significance of the bell and the pomegranate. And we explained that the hem, the bottom, shows on, so to speak, the lowest level of people. And those people's service to Hashem are hinted to with a pomegranate and with bells, because bells make noise, and pomegranates, the Talmud compares to even the emptiest between you, people that are empty, people that, so to speak, superficially seem empty from mitzvot, but really, the Talmud says, they're full of mitzvot. However, how are they full? In a way that each mitzvah is a compartment for themselves. People that are not totally refined. And those people are, their service to Hashem is the way of noise, excitement. And even those people are included and part of the Kohen's garments, and he has to include them in his service. So after this whole discussion, if I ask, what's better, someone who serves Hashem with noise or silently and calmly? What would the answer be? silent, calm. That shows on the righteous person, the one that has a close connection, a close-up connection. However, typical for the Rebbe, he doesn't suffice with that. He says, no, true, right? The righteous person has that close connection. However, there is an advantage on someone that has to make noise. The advantage is that he's not limited. When you're excited about something, a lot of times you go over the top. So that connection, a noise connection, has an advantage over a silent connection, that it's not limited, that it's excited, it's exciting. And the Rebbe goes even further and actually takes this to a very practical level. And I'm sure everyone's familiar. One of the ideas the Rebbe encouraged was to make noise about mitzvot, to publicize, let's say, menorah lightings in public, to ask people and to give people the opportunity, even on the street, to do a mitzvah, to put on tefillin, to shake lulav and etrog, and to make an excitement about Torah mitzvot. And some people argued and said, it should be calm, modest, silent, in a silent way. The Rebbe said, no, it should be with excitement. And he said, you know where it comes from? The hem of the high priest's robe. There is bells to make noise. That's coming to teach us that sometimes we have to make noise. And we, in generations, we are the generation that is the bottom, we're called the heel of Mashiach, or we, in the terms of our class, we are the hem of the robe. We're from that bottom generation, so to speak. If we compare ourselves to earlier generations, they seem much better, much more spiritual, much more connected. Our generation seems much more distant. But he says, no, there's an advantage in the noisemakers. There's an advantage in the noisemakers and the pomegranates and the bells on the bottom of the hem. And therefore encourage people to use this attribute to publicize more Torah mitzvot. And he said even further, in the world these days, people like to speak about themselves. People like to publicize things. Almost privacy is almost disappeared. Better or for worse, but that's the fact. So if that's the case, if that's the state the world is in, so we have to use that to spread and to make more noise about Torah mitzvot and to publicize it more. So that's actually how he took this idea, very profound and deep idea of the bells on the bottom of the robe of the Kohen, which represent the people that are distant, that are looking and searching and excited to come close, and says there's something beautiful there. There's an unlimited connection there. There's a connection there's a connection there that's excited over coming close. Someone who's always close doesn't always feel that excitement. Someone who's coming close, who's far and coming closer, that's it. So even though our generation as a whole maybe seems less spiritual, but we have advantage. We have the advantage of the noisemakers, and we have to publicize Torah and mitzvot. We have to use it to share the light. So that was this is a thought that he said on this idea, really a minute detail, a small detail. We almost would, if you see the high priest, you could almost ignore the bells, a row of bells on the bottom of his robe. But the Rebbe zooms into it and explains the significance and the depth that there is in these bells and the meaning for it in our lives. Any comments or questions? Yeah. You want to say?
Just using your example, as a good material to discuss that it's a wealthy person and a beggar are in the same restaurant eating delicious food. I think it's a really good example because they're just a very small percentage of rich people who could enjoy it.
That's true.
And there's such an abundance of beggars who are looking for, educational part and ideas how to become not necessarily rich, but accustomed to that type of lifestyle, just to compare it. And the second one, I believe that bells are, in general, they're kind of represents the entry of something important or beginning of something important. No wonder the doorbell maybe comes from the same kind of example that, someone wants to enter, someone wants to have attention of people. And another thing that to me, it's very close because I'm being a musician, I'm dealing with it. It's temperamental. It's a character of a person, how he comes to a specific condition in their spiritual life. Some people need it with the quiet atmosphere. For some, excitement and true understanding comes with a completely different mood.
Right.
But in general, I believe that this idea that, yes, a quiet person is used to it. He knows where he is. He knows what he is doing. It's his nature. And for someone who is still trying to achieve it, trying to become what he wants to, I think this excitement and noise really makes a lot of sense. It's different reasons for that. It's personal and maybe it's the stage where they are in their spiritual development that makes kind of a difference. That's how I say it. But it's a really interesting example. I think it's good. It's clear to understand. It's altogether this idea of such a detailed instructions about tabernacle and the garment. It's just sometimes a little bit difficult to understand why the measurement, why the materials of things that are practically not available in the desert, why people had to bring it from so far away. That's why this kind of explanation of a spiritual meaning of all of the specifics, I think it's important to understand.
Right. Because very big meaning to the details.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think we could overlook the details, but when we see how meaningful and deep every detail is.
Right. Yeah, because it doesn't look like that just from the outside, just only from the top of it. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your input. Definitely enlightened us, and thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, so everyone have a good afternoon, and hope to see you next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, sure.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Rabbi. Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Rabbi.